Hello, and welcome to the first day of prompts for the slow stitching series Stitch the Season. We'll do 10 prompts this year, and today's the first one. Now in the first video, the planning and prep video, I show you how to make the backgrounds, the basis for all 10 of our hanging ornaments, and you can check that out here. But if you're ready to start, let's get going. The first prompt is near and dear to me, and it's peppermint. Now you can take this prompt in any direction that speaks to you. If you prefer to use the peppermint plant as your inspiration, go right ahead. If you like the peppermint candy, use that. And that's exactly what I'm doing today, where I'm taking the peppermint and I'm stitching yarn candy canes onto my ornament. Now I'll show you my process here. Since our first prompt is peppermint, I brought out reds and whites. I brought some fabric that I have that has peppermints, as well as the peppermint stripe. Now for this fabric, I tea-dyed this swatch, just so I got a muted color. And I just had this in my stash for the past year. So I'll set these fabrics aside for now. I also have the back of my ornament with my number embroidered on it from our first video. And I'm going to set that aside because I'm not going to use that until I'm done with my piece. Now here's the swatch for the front of my ornament, and this is the piece I'm going to stitch on and work on today. I have a couple of examples over here for you of various candy canes, which are a form of peppermint. And so the fun with this prompt is you can take it anywhere you want to go. I have some peppermint beads here just for inspiration. I'm not sure I'm going to use those. But then I took some fabrics. They're just neutral fabrics, really. Reds and tea-stained fabrics. I might incorporate this as well. I have some threads here, some beautiful yarns in the neutrals, a white, and that deep red. It's almost a burgundy. I have some rickrack in white and red. And then I have beautiful embroidery floss. And I love embroidery floss because the colors it comes in is just so yummy. They have all these different colors, from nice burgundy that's variegated to a more berry color, standard red, and then this beautiful thread that's kind of like a merlot. I also have some twine here that's bleached, so it kind of has a different effect. And to me, these are all things that struck me as pepperminty and candy caney, so this is where I'll start. I think I'm going to create just a simple series of peppermint sticks on my background piece here. And I'll take a little scrap of fabric and put it behind my piece just to stabilize it a little bit. So I'll pin that in place. And then I'm just going to do a series of peppermint sticks. So I'll take this nice, beautiful thread here and I'll cut it to a more manageable size. And I'll do this with a couple of pieces, just trying to find my layout. So I have my neutrals. Maybe I'll do one more. Yeah, I'll do this in this beautiful burgundy. So now I'm just going to create those candy canes on my piece. I can either bend them to create the candy canes, which is kind of a fun look. And maybe I'll do that. I'll face them all in the same direction, overlapping. I'm going to start though by changing this to make the thickest one on the right-hand side, which will be the base. And they'll overlap accordingly. And so now, because these are my colors, I want to stick with the darker colors. I don't want to go with the bright reds. So I'll remove these pieces. Now for this piece, because I know I want my candy cane approximately on the outer third, I'm going to start just by putting down my solid piece, and I want it at a little bit of an angle. So ultimately it will look like that. Pull it down just a little bit, and I'm going to let this run off the edge. I'm going to take my pin and just pin through this candy cane here just to reinforce it and hold it in place. And ultimately I'll cut this off, but I want to start tacking it down first. And by doing that, I'm going to do double duty because I'm going to make it my stripe. So I'm going to come in here and then just go across at whatever angle I want, starting that candy cane stripe. Pull it snug, come up to another spot, and do the same thing. So now that it's starting to hold in place, I can just work on my spacing for now. Come right to the end here. I still leave a little bit overlap, but I just want to make sure I have that cane tacked down nicely. And then I'm just going to double stitch that piece. Just help reinforce that last piece. And now I can remove that pin and gently clip that edge. And I'll play around with that a little bit later, but I want to make sure I have my piece fairly tacked down. So now I'm going to come in there and just make little stitches in between those large stitches that I tacked down, and I'll work my way back down the candy cane. This will emphasize the curve and really give us that nice candy cane appearance. And now once I get to the end here, I'll decide that I want my candy cane to be approximately that long. So I'll just continue making little stripes across it until I get to that spot. Once I'm happy with the length, I'll trim off that candy cane. And then I'll knot my piece on the back. And so there I have my first candy cane, and I'll trim that up a little bit later. I want to work on that second candy cane, creating a little bit of overlap onto the first one. So again, I'll make my shape exactly how I want it. Take that pin and hold it in place just temporarily. And then I'll start stitching my candy cane down the same way. Start at the base here. Creating those stripes, going up the entire length of that red cord. I'm going to play with that arc just to get that bent cane exactly as I want it. And all I'm doing is tacking down this yarn. And now I'm going to go right over that first candy cane we put down. I'll clip off that candy cane. Once I have that arc, I'll put another stitch towards the end here just to really hold it in place. Then I can go back down that candy cane, but instead of breaking up the stitches, I'm just going to make 2 thick stitches on each of the stitches I've already put in. I'll just come back around and add stitches side by side. This thickens it up and adds a little bit of interest. When I get to my last thread, I'll just snip off the end of that candy cane. And knot my thread. And now I want to complete my last candy cane. So I'll place my final stem, pin it in place, and go through that same procedure. So there I have my 3 completed candy canes for my peppermint prompt. I'm going to do a little bit of stitching just around the back here, just to add some interest and texture. And I'm just going to do this with this neutral pearl here, this ecru pearl. I'm just going to add some stitches, kind of like seed stitches. So I just come around and make a little stitch here and there. And I'll do this all the way around the background. It'll add just a little bit of interest. Now for these stitches, I try and keep them all relatively the same size, more or less, but I like to go in different directions, and this adds a very interesting background. The more stitches you add, the more interesting the texture becomes, but I like just a few stitches here, kind of like little sprinkles. You could do them in different colors. The choices really are yours. It's a great thing to tailor your project with these little stitches. It adds interest, and it's just about spending time creating your project. So now I have the front face of my peppermint prompt all complete. I'm really pleased with it. And now all I have to do is attach it to the backing. I'm going to just set it down where I want it on the piece, add a pin to hold it in place, and now I'm just going to tack it all the way around with a simple stitch. I'm going to come in here on the inside, tuck my tail, and just complete my stitches all the way around. I'm just going to do a straight stitch all the way around, going through all the layers of the backing, the front, and then when I get to the ribbon for the hanging part, I'll go through that as well. So here's the front of my ornament. Here's the back with my number, my stitching all the way around, and now it's ready to be hung on my tree. So here's my ornament from the first prompt for the Stitchtheseason series. I'm going to post it on Instagram as well, and I hope you'll join me by posting your work on Instagram. Tag me if you'd like, but I'll take a look at the hashtag Stitchtheseason. Be sure to join me tomorrow for the second in our prompt series.